we're not in a position to state that the possibility of further illegalities can be ruled out. Stop. In this backdrop, when a systemic fraud has vitiated the entire process, the High Court was justified in setting aside the entirety of the selection process. Next. We are of the view that the submissions which have been raised on behalf of the petitioners would merit further consideration. But stop. The issue pertaining to, don't say the issue pertaining to, the certificate under Section 65B of the Evidence Act was issued, as the CBI report notes, by Pankaj Bansal, who was a former employee of NISA Communications Private Limited. But stop. The legitimacy of the certificate, which has been obtained from the above individual, would prima facie lie at the root of the data which forms the basis of the judgment of the High Court to set aside the entirety of the appointments. That apart, from the material which has been placed on the record before the High Court by the SSC and by the CBI during the course of its investigation, it would emerge that the appointments which suffer from taint from, what did I say, from the material? Question from the course of the investigation, a further issue which would merit closer analysis is as to whether the appointments which suffer from a taint can be specifically segregated. But stop. If such an exercise is possible, it would be unfair to set aside the entirety of the selection, which extends to as many as to approximately 25,000 appointments. But stop. The court cannot also be unmindful of the impact of the setting aside of a large complement of assistant teachers who have been recruited for both class 9 and 10 and class 11-class 12 students, which would be the consequence if the impugned judgment were to be upheld as it stands. But stop. Assuming that such a segregation is possible, this court would have to determine the modalities which would be followed for that purpose. But stop. At this stage, the court must be guided by the fact that by its order dated 9 November 2023, this court had protected the appointments which had been granted subject to the direction to the High Court to expeditiously dispose of the writ petition. Full stop. Bearing in mind The High Court, bearing in mind the present stage of the matter, we are of the view that an expeditious and early disposal of these proceedings would be in the interest of justice, and we accordingly direct that the proceedings be listed for hearing and final disposal on 16 July 2024. Stop. In the meantime, we're inclined to continue the ad interim protection which was granted by this court in its order dated 9 November 2023, subject to the express stipulation that persons following in the that any person who is found to have been appointed illegally and is continued as a consequence of the present order shall undertake to refund the entire amount of the salary which may be paid between the date of this order and the final judgment of this court. Full stop. This would cover illustratively the 4 categories of individuals noted earlier, namely, bracket 1, we need not, we can just say for the in paragraph 240 of the judgment, which has been reproduced.
Your Lordship have not said anything about the state sub.
Now with this sample. On the earlier date, the High Court has